So I'm going to go quickly through the astronomy section. I recommend that it be studied thoroughly and well understood. I'm going to primarily focus on the lunar phases and meditation upon them. The first mention here we see in this picture on page 9 is about the ecliptic and how all the planets are moving through the ecliptic. The ecliptic in Sanskrit is called Ravi Marga, the path of the sun. As we see, the planets aren't moving like an atom. Everything is moving as a saucer in a certain plane that's actually about 7 degrees. So when the planets are moving, what we actually see is we see them moving through the sky within a 7-degree band. That's called the ecliptic. And you know where that ecliptic is based on where the sun is, because the sun is moving within the ecliptic. From a Hora perspective, from a Ganita perspective, the earth is moving in the ecliptic. But from our vantage point, it looks like the sun is the one that's moving in the ecliptic. On the next page, 10, we can see that the moon is also moving around the earth in about that same ecliptic line. We see the ecliptic as the dotted line moving across, and we can see that the moon is circulating in about that similar range. We see in the next picture that the earth is not spinning exactly upright. It's slightly tilted. This tilting does two things. We see that it creates the seasons, which you can read more in depth on. It also means that the ecliptic is not moving directly overhead. If you ever watch the sun is slightly moving at an angle through the sky. This is very important to understand once you begin observing the planets in the sky. As I said, we're not going to focus too much on this, but I recommend studying this and reading it more deeply. Okay, so on page 12, the top diagram is showing how the signs are rising in the east, moving through the sky, and setting in the west. And as you can see, if you know the symbols, we have Aries rises first, then we have Taurus rising. If you look, there's 12 signs, and we have 24 hours in a day. With that calculation, you can understand that it takes about 2 hours for a sign to rise. So each sign being 2 hours is 24 hours in a day. It's approximately, but it's actually a little bit shorter, which allows for the signs to slightly change every day. Meaning that every month we get a shift happening. Every hour, half a sign rises. This is an important calculation. Every hour, half a sign rises. Every 2 hours, a complete sign rises. A day is called either a dina or an ahar. And night is called ratri. A day and a night together is called an ahoratra. One of the sages of Vedic astrology teaches us that when we drop the A and we drop the tra and we just take the middle, you see on page 11 the breakdown of this word. Second to last paragraph, ahoratra. We drop the A and we drop the tra and we just have hora. Hora represents the 1 hour. That's half a sign. As we get into the later sections, you'll see that there's a division where each half a sign has a different energy. So the first half of Aries is different than the second half of Aries. The first half of Taurus is different than the second half of Taurus. Those are the 2 horas of each of those signs. Every sign has 2 horas because it takes 1 hour for that half to rise. That hora becomes our word hour as it comes into English. So hour is based on a half a sign. At the same time, the sun is moving through the sky 1 degree every, if we look we go around the sun in 1 year, which is 365 days approximate. That is rounded off to 360 for calculation purposes. That movement of each degree around the sun is 1 day. So the sun moves 1 degree every day. So the 360-degree circle is based on that movement of the Earth around the sun, which is perceived from Earth as the movement of the sun through the signs. The moon is moving through all the signs in 1 month, in 30 days. So a month is based on the moon's movement. A year is based on the sun's movement. An hour is based on the signs' movement. A week is based on the 7 planets. The point of this is that time is based on astronomy. Parashara tells us, and it's on page 13 right underneath this diagram, and I'm skipping over a lot of stuff that is very important to understand, but we have half an hour for this session left. Parashara tells us that the zodiac is Vishnu's Kala Rupa. Vishnu is a name of the divine, so the divine's Kala Rupa. Kala means time, Rupa means form. So when the divine being takes the form of time, it is the zodiac. So it's the zodiac and the movement of the planetary bodies that give us time. This is very key to understand. It's a root understanding. We understand that all this above us is what gives us time. That time is based on this. Our months, our years, our hours, even our minutes when we begin breaking it down. So one of the key factors, and there's so many, we could go for hours about the importance of this, but one of the key things to understand is that everything happens within time. Time is qualitative. From the Western perspective, time is just by chance. If you just start using your clock and ticking and using a plain calendar, it's just by chance that it happens to be this day and this time. But when we begin to understand from an astronomical perspective, it's a certain hour of the day because the signs are rising and the sun has moved so far through the sky. It's a certain day of the month because of the moon's movement. It's a certain time of the year because of where we are around the sun. So time is qualitative. In the wintertime, it's a quality. Winter has a quality that's different than summer. All time is qualitative. The different days of the week have a connection to the different planets. Thereby, Monday has a lunar energy, where Tuesday has a Martian energy. There's a qualitative difference to these days. When you are born at a certain time that has qualitative essence and characteristics. And those qualitative time characteristics affect who you are, what you are, and what you're manifesting in this life. At the same time, every day, every hour has a different energy associated with it, based on the qualitative nature of time, which at its fundamental essence is based on astronomy. As time is qualitative, you have times in your life that are good. You have times in your life that are bad. You have times where you have plenty of money, and you have times where you are poor. So in this way, you're born with a birth chart, but it doesn't all happen at once. It goes through times and phases, and based on time, certain things are invoked. So the more we understand time, the more we are able to understand how Vedic astrology works. Because everything is happening within time. You were born within time, you matured within time, you got married within time, You lost relatives within time, and you'll die within time. So time is unfolding. Time is the key.
Are there any resources that you could refer me to as far as how this relates to the Gregorian calendar and when that was adopted and that sort of thing?
You can go online and there's some beautiful resources. The thing about the Gregorian calendar is it was made by the church,
Right.
and it was not based astronomically. Originally, the breakdown of the 12 months relates to the 12 signs.
Right.
And the 30 days of the month relate to the 30 degrees of a sign.
Right.
And if we look at the ancient names,
Mm-hmm.
December is Desa is 10. November
Mm-hmm.
is the 9th month.
Mm-hmm.
October, Octa, 8th month.
Mm-hmm.
From the astronomical perspective, these were based on the signs and the movement of them. Slowly it began to evolve, and the thing is, when you're basing your months astronomically, because it's not a perfect circle, it's not exactly 360 degrees.
Right.
There's a slight variation. And so over time, it goes slightly off and it needs to be adjusted and rectified. The church decided that astrology was evil, killed all the astrologers, and then had nobody to make the calendars anymore.
That was down.
So they took a bunch of people that didn't understand the calendar to form the new calendar, to rectify it, to change it, because it had gone out of, it needed to be rectified, because normally it's rectified every 3 years. Because of the social, cultural situation, they changed that. And so the Gregorian calendar is no longer based astronomically.
What is the name of the type of calendar that this would be called?
Well, what we find is actually in India, every state has a different local calendar. Some of them place more importance on the moon. Some of them place more importance. There's places in South India where the month is actually Gemini is the month. Aries is the month. There's other places where it's the lunar phase that is giving the month. So there's differences of opinion on that. The basic concept, though, is that this is the foundation of time.
Okay.
One of the things that I would like to do in the future is to make an American-style calendar that is based on the astronomical, and to promote that, which, the thing is, when we look at a calendar is a yantra.
Oh, what?
A yantra. It's boxes and squares with numbers that is tapping you into a certain reality.
Right.
And the Gregorian calendar, looking at that calendar every day we look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it tunes you into the Gregorian reality.
Well, I've heard it said that the Gregorian calendar is a war calendar, so it tunes us into a war-based reality.
I wouldn't say it's war-based. It was made by the church.
Well, there's a whole lot of theory and thought behind it, but
There's a lot of theory. The bottom line is it's tuning us in to that level of consciousness. When we begin to tune in to the planets and stars, we actually are tuning into the universe, which is what we are. Which, whatever form of divinity you believe in, the divinity created it, or it is the divinity itself, or it is our true nature. And it aligns us with our true nature. And when you begin to look at the chart and look at time through that basis, you are actually aligning with reality. So one of these days it would be wonderful that we incorporate something like that into our realities, instead of looking at this Gregorian calendar all the time. But the foundation of why the Gregorian calendar is using a month of 30 days is based on, it's derived from that.
that's what I thought. I thought that there was a specific name to this type of calendar.
There's multiple
But
there's multiple variations.
On the signs, planets, and the houses.
Exactly. But they're all based on that.
Okay, thank you.
This chapter has given us a general overview of the factors that we're going to be looking at in Vedic astrology. Everything else is deepening what we've just talked about. This next technique or exercise that I'm going to speak of is going to be to get you to start thinking astronomically. to kind of change the way you're looking at the sky and living your life a little bit. We're going to talk about the phases of the moon. And we're going to use the two charts on page 14 and 15. So our first thing that we need to do is we need to understand how the phases of the moon are created. And this is the diagram on page 14. So we can see where the sun is placed. The sun is placed to the right here. And on the outside circle, we have what the moon looks like from the earth. On the inside circle, we have what the moon looks like if we were looking at it from a Ganita perspective. So we can see that when the moon is lining up with the sun, there's a 0-degree angle between them. That we get a new moon. If you look, the bright side of the moon is facing the sun, so we see its dark side. Where when the moon is 180 degrees away from the sun, we can see that we get a full moon. If you look at what it looks like from the sky, it's still half dark. But you can see that we get the bright side of it there. Okay? Now, we can see that the moon moving away is waxing, and as it moves towards the sun, it's waning. Because when it's with the sun, it's new. So as it moves towards the sun, it's waning. As it moves away from the sun, it's waxing. Very key concept. So now, what I want you to try is shutting your eyes. Imagine that the sun is in front of you. And you're the earth. So that the light is coming from the sun. When the moon is moving basically in the area of the sun, the bright side of that is to the sun, and you only see the backside. It's dark, isn't it? Okay, as it starts to move to your left, you start to get a little bit, you get to see the light. The sun is in front of you. The light is shining from the front. See, as it's moving to the left, you start to see more and more of the actual light being reflected. So that when it's actually on your right, if you look over at it, you can see the half that's light and you can see the half that's dark. Do you see that? Can you visualize that? That's your half moon. As it moves behind you, it's getting the full amount of light from the sun. So if you turned around and looked at it, you would see just the light reflecting. You can't see the dark side of it. As it moves towards the right side, it's again starting to phase. So that when it's directly to your right, you can see both the dark side and the light side. And as it starts to move closer and closer to the sun, you start to lose the light side until it's towards the sun where you can only see the dark side of it. Everybody got that? Can visualize that phase of the moon. So this is how the phases of the moon are being created. That's step one. Now, the important thing to understand about that is, let's just take your right hand and point towards the sun. And now, take the left hand as it moves away from the sun. Look at the angle between those hands. And then we move all the way to the half moon. Half moon is directly to your side. 90-degree angle. So we can see that that half moon is a 90-degree angle. Now if we go and we point back towards the full moon, when it's behind us, it's 180 degrees. If we point to the waning moon, again a 90-degree angle. As it begins slowly getting closer and closer, we can see that angle getting smaller and smaller. Every 12 degrees of that angle is considered a tithi, or a lunar phase. That's how a lunar phase is calculated in Vedic astrology. Every 12 degrees. Now there's an important harmony that's hidden in here. In Vedic astrology, there's 30 tithis, 30 lunar phases. And they're each 12-degree angles. For the sun, there's 30 degrees in a sign and 12 signs. 12 and 30. 30 degrees, 12 signs. For the moon, there's 30 phases, each 12 degrees in size. So you see the switch over there. Each and every one of those things means something. The 12 signs of the sun represent the areas of life. Each 12 degree portion of the moon is representing the, as we go into it later, the water element and how the water element is affecting our life. The water element rules love and relationship. So each 12 degree portion is changing our relationship and how things are relating and interacting. So each phase, each 12 degree increment has a different qualitative energy. And it's giving different qualitative results. That is later in the Hora part. We speak about that in the chapter on Panchanga. What I want you to practice so that it actually becomes more real, more alive, is to begin to realize that on the new moon, that the sun and the moon are together. So when the sun rises, where's the moon? With it. So the moon is with it all the way through the sky, so you can't see it. When we're in a waxing half moon, it's a 90 degree angle, correct? We just calculated that. So when the sun is rising, where is the moon?
Below us.
90 degrees below us. It's in the 4th house. As the sun rises and rises, when does the moon rise?
Well, it's in the 10th house.
When the sun is directly above in the 10th house, the moon will rise. When the sun sets, where will the moon be? 90 degree angle directly above us. So this is important to understand. On the full moon, and we're just doing the 4 main directions. We're going to, in a minute, break it down to even smaller. But first, we got to understand those 4 directions. Full moon, 180 degrees apart. So when the sun rises, where's the moon?
It's setting.
It's setting. When the sun is high noon, where's the moon? When the sun is setting, on full moon day, when the sun is setting, where's the moon? It's rising. So on full moon day, the moon rises exactly at sunset. And it's in the sky the entire night. Because as soon as the sun rises, that's when it starts setting. Okay? So important to understand. Now, when the moon is waning half, instead of it being this angle, it's that 90 degree angle. Correct? So when the sun is rising, and all this is in the chart, which is on page 15. But when the sun is rising, on the waning half, when the sun is directly above us, it's setting. When the sun is set, where's the moon? Do we have it yet? When does the moon actually rise? At midnight. Okay? So that's our first understanding. The next thing to understand is that each phase of the moon is 12 degrees. When we look in the sky, 12 degrees is equal to 1 fist. So if you put 1 fist on the horizon, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 8 fists to half moon. It's about 7.5, but so it's 8 to above us. So each night, the moon is moving 1 fist difference. The first homework to begin studying Jyotish that I gave was the planets and starting a book and writing down all the significations. The second assignment is to begin watching the moon rise, calculating when will the moon rise. Look at the phase of the moon. There's Vedic Astrology software that's on the website, easily downloadable for free, so you can double check yourself. Look at the tithi, where the moon is, and begin to connect what the phase of the moon is and when the moon will rise. And calculate it and watch. Look for it. Connect with the sky. Begin to enter that place that a traditional Vedic astrologer had to go to before they were ever taught how to interpret a chart. They had to understand how to calculate this stuff first. They didn't just learn how to download the program and type in the data. They learned what was happening in the universe. They connected with the universe. They began to understand the universe. And then they began to interpret it. So this first assignment is geared to get you to connect with the sky, to begin to astronomically calculate what's happening. So before the next class, every day, calculate when is the moon going to rise, and go out and watch. See how well you become. See how much more connected you are, how much more aware you are of where the planetary bodies are and how they're interrelating to each other.